It is early October on the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta in western Alaska. The light is flat and silver. The grasses along the mudflats are turning the color of old straw, and the air carries the particular cold of a season that has already made its decision. A group of birds stands at the water's edge. They are large, brown-gray shorebirds, not spectacular birds, not the kind you would stop and point at. They have long, slightly upturned bills. They move methodically through the shallows, probing the mud with practiced efficiency. They are eating. They have been eating for weeks. They are eating as though their lives depend on it, because within the next few days, their lives will depend on exactly how much they ate. These are bar-tailed godwits. Lamosa laponica boweri. And sometime in the next 72 hours, one of them will lift off this shoreline, turn south, climb into the Pacific sky, and will not land again for 11 days. Not 11 days with rest stops. Not 11 days with brief landings on ocean islands or floating debris. 11 days of continuous flight across open water. Over 8,000 miles of Pacific Ocean with no food, no water, no sleep in the conventional sense, and no landmarks of any kind. This is not a description of an extraordinary individual. This is what the species does, every autumn, reliably, in large numbers. It has been tracked by satellite, documented in peer-reviewed journals, confirmed by multiple research groups across multiple decades. The U.S. Geological Survey has the data. Massey University in New Zealand has the data. The journals have the papers. The question that remains open, the question that those papers keep circling without fully answering, is how. Not how the body survives. Researchers have gone some distance on that. How this bird, with a brain the size of a walnut, navigates 8,000 miles of featureless ocean to within kilometers of its target, alone, on its first migration, without ever having made the journey before. That part remains genuinely, documentably, peer-reviewedly unsolved. Welcome to this channel. We cover bird behaviors that science has confirmed and cannot fully explain. If that sentence sounds like something you want to spend time with, subscribe now. And stay with this video to the end, because the final section covers what happens inside a godwit's skull during that crossing, and what researchers found when they actually measured it. The answer is stranger than anything a nature documentary has told you. Most people who know about bird migration assume it works something like this. Birds have an instinct for direction, they follow coastlines or mountain ranges, they stop when they are tired, and they learn the route over several years of practice. A young bird follows older birds. Experience accumulates. The route becomes familiar. This is accurate for many species. It is a reasonable assumption. It is also completely wrong for the bar-tailed godwit. Satellite tracking conducted by the U.S. Geological Survey and the Pacific Shorebird Migration Project, published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B in 2009, established something that required researchers to rethink their models. Juvenile godwits, birds just months out of the egg, birds that had never made the journey, completed the nonstop Pacific crossing successfully. They did not follow adults. There are no adults to follow. The older birds leave Alaska several weeks earlier, on a different schedule entirely. The juveniles depart alone, into open ocean, on their first attempt, and they arrive. Robert Gill at the Alaska Science Center described this as among the most remarkable findings in shorebird biology in decades. The route is not learned. The direction appears to be encoded. What makes this genuinely strange is this: researchers have since confirmed through crossbreeding experiments that hybrid offspring of birds with different migratory orientations fly an intermediate direction, as though the compass setting is inherited like eye color, written into the genome before the bird has ever seen the sky it will navigate. But how a genome encodes a specific 8,000-mile bearing across a featureless ocean, and how that bearing is expressed with enough precision to be useful, that mechanism has not been mapped. Most people assume that a bird preparing for a long flight would eat more, grow larger, and then fly. Straightforward fuel loading. The body stays the same, it simply gets heavier with stored fat. The godwit does something more extreme, and more strange. In a 1998 paper published in the AUK by Thunis Piersma of the University of Groningen and Robert Gill of the U.S. Geological Survey, a paper with the deliberately blunt title, Guts Don't Fly, the researchers documented what bar-tailed godwits actually do before departure. They do not simply add fat. They dismantle themselves. In the weeks before migration, the godwit's digestive organs shrink. The gizzard, the liver, the kidneys, the intestines, all of them reduce in mass. The gut essentially atrophies to a fraction of its normal size. At the same time, the flight muscles increase. The heart grows. The bird re-engineers its own body for a single purpose, discarding the metabolic machinery it no longer needs and expanding the machinery it will use exclusively for 11 days. By the time a godwit lifts off in October, approximately 55% of its total body mass is stored fat, one of the highest fat loads ever recorded in a bird. It is, in the most clinical sense, a flying fuel tank with wings and a compass. What makes this genuinely strange is this: the mechanism that triggers this organ reorganization is not fully understood. Something, a hormonal cascade, a response to daylight change, possibly something else, initiates a process where the bird selectively shrinks some organs and enlarges others on a precise schedule. The signal has been hypothesized. The exact trigger, and the regulatory pathway that coordinates the sequence, has not been fully identified. Most people, if they think about how birds navigate, assume it is something like an internal compass. Birds sense magnetic north, orient toward it, and fly. A biological GPS, simple in principle. The reality is more layered, and more unsettling. Birds appear to use at least 3 separate navigation systems simultaneously: the sun's position during the day, the pattern of stars at night, and the Earth's magnetic field at all times. Each of these is a distinct sensory input, processed differently, weighted differently depending on conditions. Cloud cover shifts the weighting. Time of day shifts the weighting. Researchers at the University of Oldenburg in Germany have demonstrated that even weak radiofrequency electromagnetic interference, the kind generated by ordinary electronics in nearby buildings, can disrupt a bird's magnetic sense entirely, causing it to orient randomly. This means the magnetic system is operating at a sensitivity that picks up interference from human electrical equipment. It is not a crude sensor. It is extraordinarily fine. For the godwit specifically, the precision required is documented in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. A directional error of more than a few degrees during an 11,000-kilometer crossing would be fatal. The bird would miss New Zealand entirely, fly into ocean, and die. The navigational accuracy required for survival is measured in single-digit degrees of arc across an 8,000-mile flight. What makes this genuinely strange is this: we know the precision is achieved. We can measure that it happens. We do not have a complete account of how these 3 navigation systems, solar, stellar, magnetic, are integrated into a single, continuously updated flight bearing over 11 days, across a brain that weighs less than 2 grams. Most people assume that the physical demands of this flight, if the bird somehow manages it, would at minimum require sleep. Everything that flies burns fuel. 11 days without landing means 11 days without sleep, in the usual sense. No perching, no resting, no closing of eyes. The brain of any mammal deprived of sleep for 11 days would be non-functional. The question of how the godwit manages this has been studied, and the partial answer is one of the more disorienting facts in behavioral biology. Research on other long-distance migratory birds, published in Nature Communications in 2019, has demonstrated that some birds can sleep with one hemisphere of the brain at a time, a state called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, where half the brain rests while the other remains alert enough to maintain flight. The eye connected to the sleeping hemisphere closes, the other stays open. The bird is, in a measurable sense, half asleep while flying. Here is the number that stops researchers when they state it plainly: a godwit completing the 2021 record crossing flew continuously for 239 hours. That is just under 10 full days of unbroken flight, wing beats sustained across the entire breadth of the Pacific Ocean, during which the bird consumed its own organs as fuel as those organs shrank further, reduced its body weight by roughly half, and arrived, within navigable range of its target, capable of landing and resuming normal behavior within days. What makes this genuinely strange is this: whether the godwit actually uses unihemispheric sleep during its ocean crossing has not been directly confirmed. The sleep studies were conducted on other species in other contexts. What happens neurologically inside a godwit's brain during those 239 hours, what sleep state, if any, it enters, and how it maintains coherent navigation while in that state, has not been measured. The instrumentation required to study a bird's brain function mid-ocean does not yet exist in a form small enough to deploy. Most people, if told that birds sense the Earth's magnetic field, imagine something like a compass needle, a simple physical detection of north and south. A mechanical sense. Biological, but essentially no more mysterious than iron filings in a jar. What the evidence actually points toward is considerably stranger. The leading hypothesis for how birds detect magnetic fields, supported by research from Oxford, Purdue, and the University of Oldenburg, involves a protein in the bird's retina called cryptochrome. When light enters the eye and strikes this protein, it creates what physicists call a radical pair, two molecules with unpaired electrons whose quantum spin states are entangled. The Earth's magnetic field influences how those spin states evolve. The ratio of products from this reaction, measurable at the biochemical level, encodes directional information. The bird may not simply feel magnetic north as a sensation. It may, in a meaningful sense, see it as a visual overlay on its normal perception of the world. This is not a metaphor. The process described is quantum mechanical. The entanglement of electrons in a living protein, inside a flying bird, over the Pacific Ocean, is the proposed mechanism for how the compass works. What makes this genuinely strange is this: the quantum entanglement involved in this process has been measured to last longer in living bird tissue than in any artificial molecular system researchers have been able to construct. The biology is outperforming the laboratory. And the precise way the bird integrates that quantum signal, how it converts a shift in electron spin ratios into a usable flight bearing, remains an open question in both biophysics and neuroscience. It is early October again. The flat silver light. The cold that has made its decision. The bar-tailed godwits stand at the water's edge of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, moving methodically, eating. You know now what you did not know at the start of this video. You know that these birds are about to dismantle their own digestive systems. You know that their bodies are more than half fat, carefully loaded over weeks of precise consumption. You know that somewhere in the retina of each bird, entangled electrons are sampling the Earth's magnetic field and translating it into directional information through a process that quantum physicists are still working to fully describe. You know that one of these birds, a juvenile, first flight, no map, no guide, will in the next 72 hours lift off this shoreline and not land again for 11 days, arriving in New Zealand within range of survival. The delta looks the same as it did at the start. The birds look the same, brown, methodical, unremarkable from a distance. The feeling of watching them, if you let the facts sit fully, is not wonder in the comfortable sense. It is something more specific, the feeling of standing at the edge of a phenomenon that is real, confirmed, documented in journals, and not yet fully explained. The navigational biology of this bird exceeds our current ability to model it. We have measured the outcome. We have not mapped the mechanism. The godwit will fly regardless. It has been flying this route for longer than the field of biology has existed to study it. Have you ever watched shorebirds moving along a mudflat or a shoreline in early autumn, and felt something in their behavior that seemed, in retrospect, like preparation? I read every comment.